Chapter 10. In our village school, I had friends who spoke a lot of nonsense to me. One day, when my father was once again arrested, even the teacher couldn't restrain herself from humiliating me in front of the class. Isaac and his family are very stupid. They believe in the Christian God. Isaac's father is a criminal who is serving a well-deserved prison sentence. He is an enemy of the state and has spread un-Chinese teachings, which have already done a lot of harm to our people. Not until later did I discover the background to this hatred of Christians. One of the reasons for being against them was, of course, that communism rejected all belief in God. But it was also because Christianity had come to China with the brutal opium traders and European conquerors. The missionaries had come with sincere intentions and real love for the people, but they had used methods that the military and economic powers of Europe had established. So, at the time it was considered that Christianity had robbed the Chinese of their history and culture. People would say, one more Christian means one less Chinese. This hatred made life very difficult for the first missionaries, and it had continued down to the communist period. In fact, traces of it remain to this day, so the children soon took up the teacher's motto. They even beat me up and accused me of being an enemy of the state. I said nothing of this to my mother because she had already enough to worry about and was so concerned about my father, from whom we had heard nothing for a long time. But when one day announced that I didn't want to go to school anymore, she wouldn't let me be until I had given her the real reason. She cried a lot and held me for a long time. She was also worried by the thought that this persecution still awaited my sister, Yiling. I had the impression that she was suffering more than I was. For this reason, I summoned up my courage and returned defiantly to school. When I was about 9, I began to read the Bible myself. My father had received this Bible from an old preacher who had wrapped it in oil paper during the Cultural Revolution and buried it. It was a real treasure to my father and our family, but I found it very hard to read. In school, we learned the new Chinese language with the simplified letter symbols, but this Bible had been written in the traditional characters. Luckily, I had heard almost all the stories already and knew many by heart. We Chinese set great store by learning the Bible off by heart. In times of persecution, no one can take this knowledge away from you. My father went into a lot of trouble to make sure that I learned much of it this way. When he came back from his evangelism trips, or when he had been working in the fields during the day, I would always have to recite a chapter from the Bible. I had to slave away at the well-known verses, and now I was even getting homework. And if I was unable to recite the set verses, I would have to fast, which is what my father called it when, as punishment, I had to go without supper. That was a harsh punishment for a growing boy. We didn't have enough to eat to start with, and now this hardship on top. I began to hate the Bible and no longer read it with enthusiasm. I didn't love my father very much either at that time. He was simply away too often. When he wasn't in custody, he was off on evangelism tours, and when he finally did come home, I was questioned on my prepared chapters. Today I know, of course, that this drastic form of Bible study did me good. My father has become a great and good friend to me, and I'm grateful to him for my life and for everything that I've learned from the Bible. I often wonder how little Western Christians actually know of Holy Scripture. How can the Word form us and guide us if we don't know it? So yes, I am grateful to my father for making me cram the Scriptures. In summer, we had 3 months of holiday. That was the happiest time in the life of our village. When we were children, we would set out to discover nature. Sometimes we destroyed it as well, I'm sorry to say, but we didn't understand this at the time. When the sweet potatoes had been harvested, our parents set us out into the field to dig around. In this way, we brought home treasures that the farmers had missed. Sometimes it amounted to half a sack of potatoes. But we also provided ourselves with other food, something I'm a bit ashamed of now. We made catapults out of forked branches and rubber bands and shot at birds. The smaller birds were merely target practice. They merely died for no good reason. But the bigger ones were carried happily and proudly home as they would enhance the family menu. Sometimes we would fasten iron spikes to bamboo sticks and go hunting frogs. Even these were a welcome change to our family's diet. My grandmother was particularly skilled at making a decent stew out of frog's legs and a tasty soup out of the rest of the frog. Once when we had captured a big tortoise, the whole family had a real feast. When we went fishing, we village children used a specific technique. We stretched some foil over a bowl and cut a hole in the foil. We placed a few bits of bread in the bowl and submerged it in the river. Fish came during the night to nibble at the bread. To do this, they had to swim through the hole in the foil, but they weren't able to get out again. In the morning, we would run down to the river and gather in our harvest. But sometimes the entire bowl was missing. Either the current had carried it away, or other children had stolen our fish trap. My mother was always annoyed when we lost yet another bowl because they cost money and you had to go into town to get a new one. No way could you have called me a little saint. Naturally, I devised pranks and could be cheeky. The catapult was part of our standard equipment as boys. We carried our catapults all the time, including in school. You just never knew when something might pop up on the way to school that you could kill. I even played around with it in the schoolyard and on one occasion killed a window pane. As I was a pastor's child, this might have been viewed as retaliation against the state-run school. My father had just been imprisoned again, so a new pastor had to come sort it out with the school and the party leadership. And the pane had to be replaced as well, of course. But I was relieved that there was no worse consequences. The other boys had taught me how to whistle with my fingers in my mouth. I used this new skill with enthusiasm and let loose a daring whistle one day during class. Everybody laughed and the teacher wanted to know who had whistled. But I was too cowardly to admit it and the others did not give me away. They were proud of their success at teaching me. So we boys were all frog marched out of the classroom and caned on our backsides outside the door. I was pleased that the other boys put up with this good humor and didn't pay me back for the caning. This would have meant 33 more blows, the number of boys in the class with me. Another time I was playing with matches at school. A match would be placed with its tip on a rough surface, the thumb of the left hand held it in place, and then you flicked the match away with a finger. If it was done properly, the match would fly off, bursting into fire as it flew. On one occasion, I managed to do it very well, but there was a problem with my aim. One of the burning matches flew straight at the neck of one of the girls, set her hair alight, and left her with a nasty burn. She has probably still got the scar. My guilty conscience prickled me severely for that. I was worried that people would now speak badly of us Christians. Yes, those Christians set fire to girls and mutilate them. One day that pastor's children will set fire to the whole village. It's quite right that the father should already be in prison. Thoughts like this ran through my head, but luckily the girl's family were among the faithful in the village, and I made my tearful apologies to them. I would also often give the girl little presents after this, a pen, a juicy orange, or a stick of candy, which I would really rather have eaten myself. She accepted everything without a word or even so much as looking at me, and never said thank you. I must have hurt her feelings quite badly, quite apart from the burn itself. Whenever I think of that stupid prank now, I wish I could meet the young lady again and be reconciled with her.